evening. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
How's it going? Good. Hasn't been ruined yet? Okay. Welcome. We're glad you're with us tonight. We expect a few more knuckleheads. I mean, very nice people to come through the doors a little late. How do you like the early start time?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, we have a yay. You know me. Midnight, I'm ready to go. I'm happy. I'm doing stuff. So, to me, it sort of doesn't matter. Okay. I have no dog in that hunt, as some people used to say that I do. Okay. Don't forget, and if you haven't marked it on your calendar, the National Union of Messianic Jewish Congregations Conference is in Orlando this year, and it hasn't been in Orlando since, I don't know, 12 to 15 years ago. And the Fishers here will be speaking at different things. John is going to be on Shabbat, that means Saturday afternoon. He'll be leading a small discussion. At that time, there'll be about 5 different people leading Torah discussions, and people can go whatever they want. So if you want to hang out with boring old Rabbi John, you can go to listen to his Torah discussion and meet some new people at least. And I'll be giving part of the theology conference, where I have the very simple topic. Piece of cake, no problem here. The Trinity. That's a trick. For me, it's like, oh, okay, why did you pick me? I don't know. But anyway, it was very kind of them. So it'll be different. It'll be way different than some of these guys. And my emphasis is on some of these guys won't. So just pray for me. Pray for you there. Yeah, you can come. You can come by praying and go, hi, Patrice, we love you, even though you're a heretic. Good. Okay, don't say that out loud, but be thinking that. Plus, there's actually people you'd want to hear, like Amy Jill Levine. She's quite a scholar, and she doesn't mind speaking Messianic Jews, so she's like a mere person. A well-considered scholar who doesn't mind speaking to us. That would be good. Also, I wanted to point out that even though I believe we have the funds in hand to pay for the flood insurance, which always comes due in the middle of the summer. I know, that's what the flood insurance people do. I don't know why that is. And that means $13,300. So go, Lord willing. We have that money in the account waiting, but we still have put the roof leaking in abeyance. Do you know what that means? Had to postpone because need. That's what it means. So please pray about what your part can be. I hope you understand that these are very practical needs, and it's not because we have highfalutin ideas of, I don't know, having gold trimmed furniture up here. No, we don't care about that, but we care about the roof and the building. Now, here on your cream color insert, Or Hadash Family Directory 2018. Have you, personally, I'm talking to you, don't make me call your name. Have you personally looked in that book, which is in the foyer, and turned to your entry and seen if everything is spelled correctly, if the phone number is correct, if you have an email address listed? Because this is your official warning. We're going to keep giving the official warning. It's on you. So please do not call the office 2 weeks after we hand this out and going, well, mine wasn't right. Because it'll be your fault. Yes? And if you want to peek at someone else's and just double check it for them, that would be helpful if you see something that, well, that's not right. I know they moved last month. Well, we need to know. We're on the need to know list, and we promise, trust me, we don't sell anybody's name to a mailing. No. Maybe we should consider that. Selling. We might need to talk to the council about selling our mailing list. Anyway, we would love to be able to send everybody's information through email. It's free. See the advantage right there? It's free. But I needed to be printed out. Guess what? I bet you have a printer at your house. Or if you ask Matt really nicely, not on a Friday night, but another day, to print it out for you, he would print it out and give it to you. It's the postage, people. It's the man hours or woman hours. It's all those considerations. So if you are not getting yours through email, please consider that. It does help in the long run. It really helps. Correct? Thank you, Jen. She's a lovely person. All right. What else can I tell you about that you don't know already? Well, that's about it. Somehow I feel like we have nothing to talk about tonight, but, oh, Vimeo, in case you want to, if you want to pass this message tonight or any night along to a friend of yours or a relative, go on Vimeo.com and you'll find us under Orchadash. Also, we've mentioned that we are being carried on YouTube. Let me be clear, because I think it's good to know. We are not broadcasting on YouTube. We are not broadcasting on YouTube. The prayer and sharing portion. We do not broadcast that. And not on Vimeo either, as far as I understand. Definitely not on YouTube. So in case you were worried or wondering, we have thought about it and it's not being done. Is that fair enough for everybody? We're always thinking of you. That's what I tell my kids. Always thinking of you, darling. I'm always thinking of you. I just like to lay those guilt trips on my kids. You know, it's very helpful in certain instances. All right. Now, what can I say except it's time to start? First, I'll tell you something interesting that I found out this week. So it turns out that they have done a study and that they know what the average height was of a knight in the Middle Ages who was a warrior who was killed in battle, and they determined that it's 68 inches, so like 5 feet 8 inches. Do you know what the name of the shortest knight was? Summer solstice. 1, 2. See what I did there? That's called misdirection. It all depends on the context. So, in the context of chivalrous knights in the Middle Ages, you were not thinking summer solstice.
No.
You were thinking in the realm of day and night and stars and moons. It all depends on the context. And so that is a very good skill to practice in your everyday life. I'm hearing things. Are they in the correct context? Because context does determine meaning. And I did say that. If you want to argue with me about that, I'll meet you afterwards over and we'll have a nice talk. And I promise not to yell. I'll just sort of chuckle. Context determines meaning. So words can have different meanings depending on their context. I don't know about you, but if I just had the words, we need a revolution today, it depends on who is saying it and what kind of revolution they want. Would you agree? Yeah. Please not. This is not a setup. I'm not setting it. No. Summer solstice. No, it isn't. So, here's to a God that is clear. Here's to a God who accompanies us with us everywhere we go. Here's with a God who makes it very clear what he wants us to do, how he wants us to behave, and in what context he wants us to understand things. Let's thank him for that tonight. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
And summer solstice would want me to remind you that from his time and even earlier, what we do on a Friday night has its own context as well. If you want to know more about that context, as well as therefore that meaning and how it should impact your lives, after we're done the service, take a look at one of the inserts. It gives you all of the information, and I'll remind you of that at the end. But I thought, having it set up that way, I'll follow through on the setup that I was given. And so, as we begin, we're getting ready to welcome Shabbat. Now, Shabbat is I don't know what to call it, special shelter, a special retreat, a special respite in space and time. It's a very special day. And because it's so special, we greet it in a special way. We stand, we face the door as if we are literally welcoming Shabbat through those doors. As we remind ourselves of the commitment God made to us in the past, a permanent commitment, and a picture of what He's going to do for us in the future, the Messianic age. And you'll see references, if you're paying attention to the content and the context, you'll see some wonderful Messianic pictures that are found in Chukat, pages 14 to 25.
Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zekor b'divor echad, Yishmianu el ha'miuchad. Adonai echad u'shamo echad, v'shemo tifaret v'litila. Lecha dodi, lecha dodi l'krat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi l'krat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. L'krat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki mikor ha'bracha, ne'rosh mikadem ne'sucha, sof ma'aseh b'makshevat tchila. Lecha dodi l'krat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi l'krat kala, Shabbat nekabela. Ina ari me'afar kumi, livshei bigdei tifartechani, al yad ben yishai beit halachmi, karva el nafshi ge'ala. Lecha dodi l'krat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi l'krat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Itorari, kiva orekumi uri, shir deberi, kevor Adonai ala yigniva. Lecha dodi l'krat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi l'krat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lo shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'tzahara, tov emunei am segula, bo ichala. Lecha dodi Come, my friend, meet the bride. Let's welcome the presence of the Sabbath. Observe and remember, in a single statement, the unique God caused us to hear his command. He alone is Lord, and his name is unique, to his fame and splendor and praise. Come, my friend, meet the bride. Let's welcome the presence of the Sabbath. Let's go to meet the Sabbath, for she is the source of blessing from the beginning, anointed from ancient days, though made last, conceived first. Come, my friend, meet the bride. Let's welcome the presence of the Sabbath. Shake the dust off yourself, rise, dress in garments of glory, my people. Jesse's son, the Bethlehemite, draws near, bringing us redemption. Come, my friend, meet the bride. Let's welcome the presence of the Sabbath. Wake up, your light has come. Arise, shine, awake, awake. Sing a grand song. The glory of God is revealed to you. Come, my friend, meet the bride. Let's welcome the presence of the Sabbath. Come in peace, crown of your Lord. Come with joy and with cheer. Come to the faithful among the chosen people. Come, bride, come. Come, my friend, meet the bride. Let's welcome the presence of the Sabbath.
You may be seated. Interestingly enough, that fourth verse reflects, or at least let's put it this way, next week's Haftarah portion reflects this fourth verse, talking about the coming of Jesse's son to Bethlehem. But you'll have to hunt that up later. Shabbat has come, and so we've welcomed Shabbat. And now we say to God, thank you that you've given to us Shabbat. It's the sign of the permanence of the relationship you've given to us.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvoto v'tzivanu lahalik nershel Shabbat. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has set us apart by your commandments and commanded us to light the candles for the Sabbath. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvoto v'tzivanu Lahayot or Lagoyim, Banantan Lanu, Yeshua Mitzakenu, Ha Olah Olam. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who sanctified us by your commandments and commanded us to be a light for the nations, and gave us Yeshua, our Messiah, the light of the world. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. The second blessing reminds us of yet another reality, that God was very present among us in days of old in the person of Yeshua. But even earlier, he was very present among us as his people as we walked with him in the wilderness. A reality that was recognized by the author of these words, one of the few sets of words that's found in all of the biblical text that was not spoken or authored by a Jew. Ma tovu ohalech, how goodly are your tents, O Jacob. That wandering prophet of old, when he came upon Israel and had been, how should I put it, paid to curse Israel, found out he could not do that because he understood the reality that was in front of him, God living among his people. That's the reminder that we have, and it's a reminder that we are actually in his presence as he is present among us here. Pages 144 and 145 is the response. Jenny leads, and then we respond. But a quick footnote. I mentioned to you earlier about context. There's another context that we have in synagogues around the world and in this one as well. And that is that each cantor leads the service in his or her own way and at his or her own speed, and sometimes with his or her own tune. So do not fall asleep in the pews, but pay attention to what's not coming from this mic, but that mic, so that you're following the lead rather than, well, leave it at that. Fair enough? We follow the lead.
Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Ani berov chasecha avo vetecha, eshtachave el heikol, kadeshecha b'yiratecha. Ani berov chasecha avo vetecha, eshtachave el heikol, kadeshecha b'yiratecha. Adonai ahavti me'on beitecha, kol mishkon kevodecha, va'ani eshtachave ve'ekra'a evracha lifnei Adonai osi, va'ani tefilati lecha Adonai et ratzon, Elohim barav chazdecha, aneni be'emet yishecha. How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. O Lord, through your abounding, faithful love, I come into your house, and reverently I worship you in your holy sanctuary. I love being in your house, the place where your glory resides. Here I bow down to worship you, my Lord and Maker. Accept my prayer, O Lord, and answer with your great mercy and with your saving truth. Amen. Together? How lovely are your tabernacles, O Lord of hosts. I long, yes, I pine for the courts of the Lord. My heart joyfully sings to the living God. One thing have I asked of the Lord, that I will pursue, that I may live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the graciousness of the Lord, and to enter his sanctuary. Teach me your way, O Lord, and lead me in the right path. With you is the foundation of life. In your light we see light.
We have the privilege of entering into his sanctuary, as the text says. And when we enter into his sanctuary, perhaps we will get to experience what was experienced in our Tehillah Kabrit Kadashah portion this evening by the author of that text, Yochanan Ashliach. The text is Revelation 4, verses 2 to 11, pages 1536 to 1537. And as has been our custom, so we will continue with that custom. I'll lead you in those parts of this text that are not quotations. Those are the ones that are out to the edge, whereas I would ask you to join in responding with the parts that are in quotation marks. Those are the texts that are indented. Pages 1536 to 1537, the text begins. Ukrega hayiti baruach vehine kisei nirah. Bashamayim ve'echad yoshev al hakisei. I was in heaven. Before me stood a throne, and on that throne someone was sitting. The one sitting there gleamed like diamonds and rubies, and a rainbow shining like an emerald encircled the throne. Surrounding the throne were 24 other thrones, and on the throne sat 24 elders. From the throne came forth lightnings, voices, and thunderings. And before the throne were 7 flaming torches. In front of the throne was a sea of glass, clear as crystal. In the center, around the throne, were 4 living beings, verse 8. Each of the 4 living beings had 6 wings. And day and night, they never stopped saying,
Holy, holy, holy is Adonai, God of heaven's armies, the one who was, who is, and who is coming.
And whenever the living beings give glory, honor, and thanks to the one sitting on the throne, to the one who the one who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before the one sitting on the throne, the one who lives forever and ever, and they worship him as they throw their crowns in front of the throne, and they say,
You are worthy, Adonai Elohim, to have glory, power, and power, because you created all things. Yes, because of your will they were created and came into being.
I was about to say that last phrase of the earlier response you had, the one who is coming, translated into Hebrew is Afikomen. Technically that's translated into Greek, but you understand it also in Hebrew because we imported it. You understand therefore the connection of what's being said here. If you remember, it's Passover context in this case. We found ourselves in God's sanctuary, in his throne room, so to speak. And as we find ourselves there, Sephardi Kaddish introduces another character, another actor as well. And so now, as we respond to God's graciousness and therefore extend to him our gratitude on pages 156 and 157, we incorporate as well the image of that second actor or character. Yamut Malchute V'Yatzmach Porkane V'Yikarei Meshifei V'Chaye Chono V'Yomechono V'Chayrecho V'Yisrael V'Yagalal V'Zman Kariv Imru Amen Yahei Shmei Rabba Mevorah Ve'olam Me'olmaya Yitvarach Yahei Shmei Rabba Mevorah Le'olam u'me'omaya yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal Shmei l'kudusha b'orechu Laila min kol birchata v'yisharata tushbechata v'nechamata d'amiran be'alma v'imaru Amen Yahei Shlama Rabbanim Shemaya V'chayim Tovim Aleinu V'Yakol Yisrael V'yimaru Amen Oh, say Shalom B'Ramah Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Yakol Yisrael V'yimaru Amen Glorified and sanctified be his great name in the world, which is created according to his will. May he bring about the reign of his kingdom and cause his salvation to sprout and bring near his Messiah in your lifetime and in your days and in the life of all the house of Israel speedily, yes, soon, and say, Amen. May his great name be blessed forever and forever, eternally. Blessed and praised, glorified and exalted, extolled and honored, adored and lauded be the name of the Holy One. Blessed be he. Who is high above, far above all blessings and hymns, and praises and consolations which are spoken in the world, and say, Amen. May there be great peace from heaven, and good life for us and for all Israel. And let us say, Amen. He who makes peace in the heavenly realms, may he make peace for us and for all Israel. Let us say, Amen. In the middle of the first paragraph, we requested, using the words of the Amidah during the week, the daily Amidah, may he cause his salvation to sprout. In Hebrew, Matzmiach Yeshua. And so then we add, and bring near his Messiah in your lifetime. That is the second character or actor that shows up in that throne room scene. And we're reminded of that by some of the sages of old, the rabbis of antiquity, who expect to see not one throne, but two thrones, in the heavenly realms. One for God and one for his Messiah. And so we see the Messiah now on his throne as we respond on pages 40 and 41, awaiting the time when, as we pray, God will certainly bring near yet again his Messiah. Again, Jenny leads, we respond on those pages 40 and 41, Elohim Asher.
Elohim Asher Diber, Mikadem Hamim Rabot, U'irachim Rabot, El Ha'avot, Ve'adad Elohim, Diber Aleinu Ben Hakari, through the prophets at many times in various ways. But now, in the end of days, he has spoken to us by the Messiah, his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, and through whom he made the universe. The Son is the full radiance of God's glory, and the flawless manifestation of his reality. He sustains all things by his powerful word. After he made atonement for sins, he sat down in the place of authority beside the Majesty in heaven. True and firm, established and mastered, right and faithful, loved and treasured, desired and pleasant, feared and mighty, ordered and acceptable, good and beautiful is this word to us forever and ever.
As we contemplate these things, our response should be, wow, what a God. Or to put it into our liturgical text, Mika Mocha, who is like you, O Lord, among the gods. That becomes our response just a couple pages further along, pages 44 and 45. Jenny will lead us in the first repetition of the stanza, and then we will respond to her with the second. But this response is introduced in the following way. Praise our exalted God. Blessed is he who is to be blessed. Moses and the people of Israel sang this song to you with great joy. And as they all said, so now we all say, Who is like you, O Lord among the gods? Who is like you, glorious in holiness, awesome in praises, doing wonders?
Micha mocha ba'elim Adonai, micha mocha nedar b'kodesh, lo ra tehilot osei velei. Micha mocha ba'elim Adonai, micha mocha nedar b'kodesh, lo ra tehilot osei velei.
We asked a question that begs to be answered. It demands to be answered, and so we're going to answer it as we stand now and respond with that answer on pages 88 and 89. Ein Kamoka, truly there is none like you, O Lord, among the gods.
Ein kamoka ve'Elohim Adonai va'ein kamasecha. Now kul amin. Umem shaltacha b'kol dor v'dor. Adonai Melech, Adonai Malach, Adonai Nimlok le'olam va'ed. Adonai hos le'amo yitain. Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Together, there is none like you among the gods, my Lord, and there is nothing that compares to your deeds. Your kingdom is a kingdom that endures for all eternity, and your sovereignty extends throughout all generations. The Lord reigns, the Lord has reigned, the Lord shall reign throughout eternity. The Lord will bless his people with peace.
Your sovereignty extends throughout all generations was our response. It needs to extend throughout our generation, in fact, throughout our lives. And so we affirm that reality, we acknowledge it, and acknowledge him as our King, as we respond in pages 34 to 39 with the Shema. We turn and face Jerusalem, the direction of the ark, the place from which he will yet again rule. And we say, you, O Lord my God, are my King, forever and fully. Pages 34 to 39.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kevod Malkuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Ve'ata et Adonai Elohecha, Le'kol Avacham, Le'kol Anashka, Ve'ayu ha'arim asher Elohim esatcha kayom alevarecha ve'shinantam levanecha Bebivartam, Beshitaka, Viteka, Uvectaka, Vatere, Ushaka, Vineka, Ushatam, Leota, Viteka, Vehayutoko, Vineka, Utatam, Amzo, Viteka, Uvishareka. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone.
Blessed be he whose glorious kingdom is eternal.
Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your life, and with all your strength. These commandments I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as reminders on your hands, and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the doorframes of your houses and on your gates.
As we respond now to our God with the Amida portion for this evening, which is paragraph 5, pages 74 to 77, we make our request for the restoration of his presence, yet again, among our people and on our earth. Use these words to express that request as well as to express your gratitude, yet again, to our great God who is our King. And we say, be pleased, O Lord our God, with the people of Israel, with your prayer and with your service. Pages 74 to 77. And so may our eyes behold your return to Zion with mercy. Blessed are you, O Lord, who return to your presence to Zion. We turn now to pages 88 and 89 for Vayi Ben Soa. What we get to do here is, in a sense, we get to relive the past when our God walked among us, or actually we walk hand in hand with God as he led us through the wilderness. It also is an anticipation of the future, when as his Torah went forth among us in the past, so will go forth from among us in the future, as in fact goes among us in just a moment, now and present. Pages 88 and
89. Vayahi ben Soharon, Vayomer Moshe, Umar Adonai vayafut oivacha, leyanuzu isamecha, ichamecha. Ki Mitzion tetzei Torah, Ki Mitzion tetzei Torah, ulevar Adonai mirushalayim, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, le'amo Yisrael, And it came to pass, whenever the ark went forward, Moses would say, Arise, O Lord, and let your enemies be scattered. May those who hate you flee from before you. For from Zion shall go forth the Torah, and the word of the Lord out of Jerusalem. Blessed be he who in holiness gave the Torah to his people Israel.
We continue our response, our gratitude for the gift he's given. That response is page 133.
The ark now unveils its treasure.
to
our eyes and minds and hearts.
Inside, the scroll of Torah stands.
It stands there with all its richness and wisdom.
As we listen, voices speak, voices of our ancestors.
Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, and Moses.
Oh God, they bring us your instructions for us.
Sarah, Rebecca,
Rachel, and Leah, and Miriam speak to us as well.
Oh God, they move us to respond to your promises to us.
We are grateful for your words, the words of Torah.
Hear, O Israel, the Lord calls.
We
will hear your words, that we may learn them, love them, live them.
What does the Lord require of you? To fear him, love him, serve him, and walk in all his ways.
All the Lord has said, we will do.
Mishabarach Avotinu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov. He who blessed our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Jenny, may he bless Matthew, may he bless Rabbi John, may he bless Betty, may he bless Art, who have come up to honor God and the Torah. May the Holy One bless them and their families, and send blessing and prosperity on all the work of their hands. Baruch hu et Adonai HaMavorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMavorach Elam Va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai notei haTorah.
Amen.
Bless the Lord who is blessed.
Bless the Lord who is blessed forever and ever.
Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who chose us from all peoples and gave to us the Torah. Blessed are you, Lord, giver of the Torah.
Amen.
Jesse, she's going onto the cantor's mic.
Okay, how's that? Better? Fantastic. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe el Aharon lemor Zot Chukat HaTorah Asher Tziva Adonai lemor Daber el Bnei Yisrael Vayaku elecha Hara aduma Shmema asher lo alecha od. Unetatam ota el Elazar HaKohen, v'chotzi ota el mechutz lemachaneh, v'shakat ota lefanav. You may be seated. God spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, this is the judgment of the law which God commands. Speak to the sons of Israel and say to them that they are to bring you a red heifer in which there's no spot and in which there is no blemish and which has never had a yoke. And you shall give it to Eleazar the priest, and he shall have it taken outside the camp and slaughtered in his presence. Okay, so this is the red heifer passage, which the ashes of red heifer purify people from contamination by a dead body. But there's a conundrum because the people who prepare the ashes become contaminated, even though those same ashes are used to purify other people. And related to this, there is a midrash that asks, who can draw a pure thing out of an impure one? Is it not the one, God? And I thought, what a great encouragement that is. You know, God can pull us out of any habit or sin that we're mired in, and he can create good out of any situation, even if they seem to be horribly bad or unfair or confusing, and we have no idea how to make them turn out right. We don't have to figure it out. He's going to do it, and we don't need to know how any more than we need to know how these ashes of the red heifer work. So he gave us the Torah as a lifestyle and the sacrifice system, which of course culminated in Yeshua's sacrifice, which work together to purify us to be like this cow, where there's no spot on the outside, no two, different colored hairs, and there's no spot on the inside in which there's no blemish, like the text indicates. So we have the purification of our physical realm, how we live, and our spiritual realm, how we are internally as a person. So God can and will act on my behalf and make the changes in me that are needed. And so, since this past whole month has been so overwhelming with stuff, I really needed to read that encouragement. And I hope it's encouraging to you guys too, that no matter what you're in, you don't have to be stuck there. That God can pull you out of that. He can purify you, even if the situation seems rotten. He can make something good out of it. Even if it seems contaminated or bad, he can make something good out of it. So, Shabbat Shalom.
Right, sure.
In a dilemma. They gave me a short one tonight. God took care of it. Is that better? Can you all hear me now?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Numbers 20, verses 6 through 11. Moses and Aaron left the assembly, went to the entrance of the tent of meeting, and fell on their faces. And the glory of Adonai appeared to them. Interesting. They fell on their faces. Adonai said to Moses, take the staff, assemble the community, you and your brother Aaron, and before their eyes tell the rock to produce its water. You will bring them water out of the rock, and thus enable community and the livestock to drink. Fantastic.
melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam netav b'tochenu, baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen.
Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who gave us the Torah of truth and life everlasting, planted in our midst. Blessed are you, Lord, giver of the Torah.
Talk about bringing something out of nothing, as Jenny mentioned. Water out of a rock. The rabbis of old understood that, and so there was a midrash that rock was in fact the Messiah that followed him through the wilderness. There was another rabbi who said exactly the same thing. Look it up later tonight. It's 1 Corinthians 10. God's words are intended to impart life as well as to change lives. And so we acknowledge that these are the words that come directly from him. And so we respond to Zod HaTorah. And we respond just like our ancestors did, by standing before him and receiving his words directly, in a sense, through the hand of Moses. The Zod HaTorah is pages 98 and 99. If you need a transliteration, it's page 95.
Zod HaTorah, asher sham Moshe, lifnei bnei Yisrael, al pi Adonai, le'ad Moshe. This is the Torah which Moses placed before the children of Israel. It is in accord with the Lord's command by the hand of Moses.
You may be seated.
I'm reading from Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 to 16. I urge you then, as a prisoner for the Lord's sake, to live up to your calling from God. Always be gentle, humble, and patient, putting up with each other in love. Do your best to keep the unity the Spirit gives through the shalom binding you together. There is one family of God and one Spirit, in the same way that you were also called to one hope. There is one Lord, one trust, one immersion, and there is one God, the Father of all, who rules over all, works through all, and lives in us all. Yet each one of us has been given a gracious gift in keeping with the generosity of Messiah. This is why the scriptures say, when he went up into the heights, he led a crowd of captives and handed out gifts to his people. Now what does he went up mean? It means he first came down to the lower regions, the earth itself. The one who came down is the same one who went up, above and beyond even the heavens, to fill the whole universe. And these were the gifts he gave. Some people as ambassadors, some as prophets, some as proclaimers of the good news, and some as guides and teachers. Their mission is to prepare God's people for serving him in order to build up the messianic family of God. And so, at last, we will all reach the unity that comes from trusting and knowing the Son of God, and reach the maturity that measures up to all Messiah is. Then we will no longer be like children, tossed around by the waves and blown all over by every wind of new teaching, nor at the mercy of deceitful people who are cunning and scheming. Instead, we will lovingly speak the truth, and so will grow up to be more fully like Messiah. He is the head on whom all God's family depends. He makes the body fit together, and when each part works as it should, the whole body grows to be healthy and full of love.
Now as we respond, we remind ourselves that God's word should impact our lives, digging its roots like a tree deep into our lives, transforming us and enabling us to respond, renew our days as a whole. That response is pages 96 and 97. Please join there and make it your response.
A tree of life it is to those who take hold of it, and happy are those who support it. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. Turn us toward to you, and let us return. Renew our days as of old.
As he renews our days, so we're better prepared to stand before him, literally as his priests. As the priests of old did, so we stand now and we respond in gratitude, in commitment, and in love. Ufto Ko Yomar is that response. It's found on pages 98 to 99.
Uvnucho Yomar, Shuva Adonai Revivot Alfei Yisrael. When the ark rested, Moses would say, Return, O Lord, to the myriads of Israel's families. Arise, O Lord, to your resting place, you and your mighty ark. Clothe your priests with righteousness. May those who have experienced your faithful love shout for joy. For the sake of your servant David, don't delay the return of your Messiah. Va'avur David Avdecha, al teshev pnei mishachecha. Kilakak tov l'tatilachem, torati al ta'azovu. I give you good instruction. Do not forsake my Torah.
Shabbat school is excused. And if you'll bear with me for just a second, I'm about to excuse this battery that's about to go dead in my microphone. So it's a special night for the technology tonight. So take a couple deep breaths. I'll be right back with you. I think that's better. At least the indicator on the battery pack tells me it's green, so that means that's up. So we'll do exactly that. Now, you might remember that The Haftorah passage that was unwrapped for us last week was 1 Samuel chapter 12, verses 16 to 25, and that was the farewell statement, message of Samuel. And toward the end of that, he said, "Far be it from me that I should sin by not praying for you." Interestingly enough, the last text that you and I considered from this book that we are re-entering, the end of Ephesians chapter 3, basically the rabbi said the same thing. It is important for me to be praying for you. So I thought, oh, what a good introduction from last week to get back into the book of Ephesians this week. And then I looked at the Haftorah text for next week. It's Micah chapter 5 and 6, as I suggested earlier. And at the end of that Haftorah text is a very important text that has become, it has become one of the foundational texts, almost as much as the Shema, down through the years as Jews, where God says, among other things, here's what I'm looking for: that you walk humbly, act justly, love mercy. Justly, from Hebrew, has the idea of compassion. Mercy, of course, is fairly well and easily understood. I was reminded of that when one of the members of the synagogue, who happened to be here during the course of the week, shared one of her favorite texts with me. It happens to be Isaiah chapter 10, which stresses the same thing. So what God wants from us as a community is to act justly or compassionately, to love mercy, and so forth. And that reminded me of the last holiday we celebrated. Now, how did that get in here? Well, when I last talked to you from Ephesians chapter 3, suddenly we got interrupted by a whole series of holidays. Week after week after week, month after month after month. And the last holiday, when it was instituted originally, Leviticus chapter 23 and verse 22, it says basically the same thing. As part of this holiday celebration, God says, this is what I want from you. I want you to understand that in your community, you need to take care of the people who are poor and needy and suffering. All of that reminded me that now as we relaunch in Ephesians chapter 4, what the rabbi was praying for and asking about for us is that we become a community of caring, completely in line with the text from the previous weeks and with the idea of the last holiday we celebrate. It seems that every time we either read or hear or see the news in whatever version or whatever venue or device you're using to interact with the news, the information or the news coming at us reminds us that society around us and the world in which we live is restless, it's tormented, it's divided, it's fragmented. People around us, we understand, are troubled, they're estranged, they're lonely. And the continual rise in divorce, in emotional problems, in suicide, constantly reinforces this observation. Even the rapid proliferation of religious, and I would add as well as political cults, and the growth in their membership illustrates exactly this same point. Experts in the cults tell us this, that most people join the cults to find love and warmth and acceptance and belonging, a supportive community, meaningful relationships, and a place in which to grow as people. In other words, to enable them to better cope with the turmoil around them and to find comfort, solace, and strength. And friends, this is a real tragedy because God has structured an environment where those very needs can in fact be fully met and where people can develop as unique, special people that they are, and they can attain their full potential and much more. And that place is called the Kehillah, the local congregation and the community of people it consists of. However, friends, that warmth, that love, that acceptance, that sense of belonging and support, and that environment for growth don't just happen as if by magic. And I was reminded of that because just over the last couple of weeks, Dr. Patrice and I enjoyed the world of magic. Harry Potter. Anyhow, enough of that aside in that commercial. You see, so not by magic. You see, God has structured into the nature of this caring community two very important principles. Two important principles that are essential to its development and essential to the growth of its members. The rabbi of old, Rav Shaul, in what is called, or what is actually part of the ancient traditional responsa literature, in which a rabbi responds to questions or concerns within a community by sending them a letter that helps them understand. In his response to this group of congregations in the area around Ephesus, he tells them of these two principles, and they're found in the text that was read for you. Two principles: the harmony of the whole and the contributions of the components. And those two principles then culminate in the realization of the results. They lead to us. Us enjoying the results that God intends. Well, we start first with the harmony of the whole. That's the first paragraph. It's verses 1 through 6 as it was read to you. The instruction begins, and the instruction in verse 1 is very straightforward. Depending on which translation you're using, many of them will say something like this: live worthy of your live worthy of your calling. Or, as you have it in the translation in front of you, live up to your calling. Which raises the question, what calling? Well, in the context of this particular response in this letter from the rabbi to the congregations in and around Ephesus, our calling, he's already explained it to us through 3 chapters, is to be a demonstration of God's wisdom, to be in fact the centerpiece of his creation, to be living reasons for others to praise him and to say, what a great God, or Bikamoka, as we say. The rabbis call this concept Kiddush Hashem, living in such a way that God gets credit for the good that takes place as a result. Worthy of, that's a good phrase. It means appropriate to. That means if we are princes, we shouldn't live like paupers. We should reflect our position. We should reflect our standing in the way in which we live. And the text, please note it very carefully, does say live. Live means it's a regular part of your life. You don't just dabble in it. It's not like your buffet restaurants. Oh, I'll have a little of that and a little of that and perhaps some of this. No. We're to live in this way. That's the instruction. The ingredients of that instruction are threefold. Number 1, in verses 2 and 3, we're to be completely humble and gentle. Now notice, this is the highest manifestation of our position, of our power, and of our strength, as called by God and described by the rabbi through 3.5 chapters or 3+ chapters of this letter. To be humble and gentle. Don't miss it. That's because that's in stark contrast with the way in which society functions around us. Not just now, but back then as well. Our society teaches us to be macho rather than meek. It's the other way around. Now, if we're going to be humble in this fashion, that will lead inevitably to self-sacrifice, to service to others. That means we'll be saying no to our own expectations, rights, demands, and interests. We'll say no to pushing our own agenda or putting ourselves forward, to grabbing the limelight or drawing attention to ourselves, becoming the center of attention, or how should I put it, in need of many strokes, so to speak, in need of stroking. It means saying yes to putting the spotlight on others, to furthering them, to helping them achieve. Yeshua put it this way, Mark chapter 10, verse 45. He says, I've not come to be served, I've come to serve. That summarizes it for us very well. This involves taking the focus off our own needs, our own circumstances, our own problems, and instead being concerned with the needs and problems of others. Now, by the way, quick aside, when I say to be concerned with the needs and circumstances and problems of others, hear me carefully, I'm not talking about gossip. Clear? Okay, if we're clear, then I can get back to the story. All right, so it means getting out of our own little world. This is living the biblical ideal to consider others better than ourselves. And notice, depending on the translation, it says completely. Our translation puts it very well. Always. I'll take tomorrow off because it's Shabbat. No, always. Now, gentle is an interesting term. It doesn't mean being heavy-handed, or rough, or coarse, or short, or snapping at others. Gentle is the way in which you handle a baby. Second part of the ingredients, being patient, bearing with one another, the text says in love, or as our translations puts it, putting up with one another in love. Patient, you know what that means. That's the word that means a very long fuse. Putting up with one another. The contrast to that is, I just can't stand it. The alternate pew Bible, which are at the ends of the pews, the Living Scriptures puts it this way. Nicely done here. Putting up with an awful lot. And we're good at making sure. Yeah, I shouldn't say that. Go ahead, say it again. We're good at enabling others to put up with an awful lot about ourselves. But we should do that with others, ourselves, right? And then it says, it's to be done in love. Now, this is an interesting term, and you get all kinds of interesting elaborations and unwrapping of this term, but let me remind you of what this term love means in a biblical context. It is something that's active. It's something that's unconditional. It's something that is undemanding. It's in place despite the flaws and without the strings attached. It is, in fact, considered the climactic virtue. The rabbi of old tells us this in 1 Corinthians 13, beginning at verse 7, and then concluding at the end of that text a few verses later. But we've been told that when we were asked years and years ago, so what's the greatest commandment? And the rabbis of old said, as the rabbi even later said, it's not really one, it's two, and they both have to do with love. But you know that story, and I don't have the time to unwrap that right now, because I need to get to number 3 that's found in our text. He says, in effect, make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit of God through the bond of peace. Make every effort. In other words, as our translation reads for us, do your best. That means that involves eagerly, energetically, earnestly. Take care to do this. Make a point to do this, which raises the question, to do what? The text tells us to keep the unity of the Spirit. Perhaps a better way of putting it is to keep the unity that comes from the Spirit. What unity is that? Well, the paradigm for that unity, I don't have time to get into this, but at least I should mention it, is verses 4 to 6. And he gives what, like 7 or 8 different pictures or patterns for unity, paradigms for unity? There's one of this, and there's one of this, and well, never mind. Look it up later because we need to continue. Keep the unity that comes from the Spirit. Unity, what are we talking about? We're talking about concord. We're talking about that despite differences. We're talking about sharedness. We're talking about harmony that involves acceptance and agreement. It's something that's powerful, but it's also very fragile. It was so powerful in these days that it was enabled, or the Spirit of God enabled people to unite, even though they were Jews and Gentiles. And for that day and age, that was amazing. And then he talks, depending on your translation, about the bond of peace. Bond, not as in James, but, thank you, as in glue, which binds, holds things together. Peace. Yes, it has to do with shalom, and shalom means not only peace, it means harmony, it means wholeness, it means a whole bunch of really cool things that we don't have time to unwrap. But what he's saying here is that this should be the ruling consideration, your ruling consideration in controversies. And the only way in which we can keep the unity that comes from the Spirit, the only way we can do that is through peace. Peace, not ceasefire. Peace, setting aside grievances and reaching harmony. That's shalom, as the text says. In other words, we are to preserve, we are to pursue, we are to promote harmony among ourselves and in our community. The incentive for all that, I already shared that with you. It's verses 4 to 6, where you've got the paradigm, the pattern for the harmony of the whole. So what do we need to do to get this far? Well, always be humble and gentle. You remember. Be patient, putting up with each other and with a lot in love. And then do your best, make every effort to preserve the Spirit-given unity, the shalom, that He has granted to us. Therefore, the harmony of the whole can then be furthered by item number 2, principle number 2, the contributions of the components. Verses 7 to 13. There are two parts to this. First has to do with the presence. Yet each one of us, verse 7, has been given a gracious gift in keeping with the generosity of the Messiah. Right here, he corrects a possible misunderstanding. Unity is not uniformity. Therefore, he says here, but to each one, to each one. In other words, the individual is not demeaned, but dignified. The alternate Pew Bible, Living Scripture, puts it in a nice fashion here. It has to do with grace as He apportioned it. It's grace as He apportioned it, not as we grabbed hold of it, nor according to what we want, but according to how He has decided to apportion it. The rabbi says something very similar in 1 Corinthians 12, but that's not our text. I simply remind you, he's consistent in this. That means not all of us have the same gift, nor should all of us be seeking the same gift. And then we've got how these gifts came to be ours. This is some of the implication of Yeshua's ascension. Like a great conqueror of old, when he led the victory march, he gave out gifts to his followers, as the ancient conquerors gave out gifts to those who soldiered with them. That's another reason why it's important for us to celebrate, as we did a few months ago, Yom HaAliyah, the day of the Ascension. But I'm not going to get sidetracked by that. He apportioned gifts. So what are those gifts, you ask? Well, the rabbi says, let me tell you. It's verse 11. And these were the gifts he gave. Read it carefully. These are the gifts he gave. Some people. Notice that? The gifts are people. What do? We get it flipped around, don't we? There are spiritual gifts, but the point is he gives as his gifts gifted people. By the way, this is not an exhaustive list, so if you can't find yours on here, it doesn't mean you've been excluded. Those are the presents. Their purpose is spelled out for us in verses 12 and 13. The gifts are not for gratifying ourselves, we are told here, but they are for our own growth. They are not for our own growth or benefit, for showing off, or for demonstrating spirituality, or some sort of special relationship. But verse 12 tells us their mission is to equip and prepare God's people for serving Him. To prepare others for service. Therefore, that's the reason for the gifts. It's to equip, to fit, to outfit, to ready or to train others, so that people can serve the congregation, so that and the community, so that they can do the work that's necessary for the growth of the Kehillah. By the way, service is all-inclusive. It applies to any, this term does, to any and every service. And I want you to notice again very carefully what's found in this text. It's to prepare God's people for serving Him. Did you catch that? People, not just the leaders, do the serving. People do the work of the congregation or the equipping. All people are to be involved. Not just the rabbi, not just the council, but all, the text says. And what's the purpose of this serving? Well, we're told that the body would be built up. Hey, now friends, this is real bodybuilding. Excuse me for doing this, but every time I think about this, I remember that whole scene. It's all. We want to pump you up. Thank you that some of you are familiar with that. That's not what's being described here. After you're done chuckling, if you even bother to understand what I say, please remember that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and that's part of what's going on here. You see, an individual can accomplish more, can better reach his or her full potential when they are working in conjunction or in concert as part of a team. It's only then that we do it as well. And it's far better than trying to do it as a lone wolf or as an individual. It's a very wise man who wrote a very interesting book called Ecclesiastes. Here's what he said. Chapter 4, beginning of verse 9. Two can accomplish more than twice as much as one, for the results can be much better. If one falls, the other pulls the one up. But if the person falls when that person is alone, then they are in trouble. Also, on a cold night, two under the same blanket gain warmth from each other. But how can one be warm alone? And one standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Oh, and three is better than one. Is even better. For a triple braided cord is not easily broken. Nicely said, wise man. Okay, I'm going to get nosy. Are you using your gifts, your abilities, your talents to build the congregation, the Kehillah, and the people in it? Or are you showcasing yourself? Or even worse, are you hiding the gift? That would be selfish. Look, the idea of both serving and building, frankly, is behind the scenes kinds of stuff. Spotlighting others, not ourselves. The glory and attention going elsewhere. And the goal of this bodybuilding, verse 13. So at last we will all reach the unity that comes from trusting and knowing the Son of God and reach the maturity that measures up to all Messiah is. To reach a unity, to become mature, to attain and experience the fullness of Yeshua. That's what we're supposed to reach for. That becomes our goal, our destination. Now, for all of us, it says, the whole group. The focus, therefore, is not on individuals. The goal is a unity that springs from a common faith and knowledge of Yeshua. He's the object of both. Quick footnote on faith, quick footnote on knowledge. Faith coming from its Jewish context. Remember, context is important. Coming from the Hebrew background means this. It means reaching up and grabbing hold of the hands of God. It means jumping into his arms as a child would jump into the arms of a parent. That kind of trust and reliance. Knowledge has to do with, not just what I've got up here, but what impacts my life in the way in which I live. And the object of both is Yeshua. And the end result is to be a complete, mature person. It means that together we reinforce one another. And here the text is very significant in that it describes, or it speaks in the singular, not the plural, and I'm sorry to do grammar on you on a Friday night. You're supposed to be in your Shabbat snooze. But because it's singular, not plural, it's not talking about individuals, it's talking about a group or a unit. And it says we're supposed to reach the full measure, the full stature, or as our translation has it, measuring up. Measuring up to what? Well, in other words, a complete, mature experience of all Yeshua is and offers. In other words, being full grown, completely developed, being like the Messiah himself, experiencing his full orbed life through us. If we follow principle 1, and if we follow principle 2, then we'll get to share in the realization of the results. Well, we're going to say a couple things about this here. First of all, there'll be a growth in stability. Please pronounce that carefully. It's not growth in stability. Thank you. Good. It says, you'll no longer be infants. You will no longer be like children, the text says, tossed around by the waves, blown all over by every wind of new teaching, and so forth. No longer infants, children, or immature. Now this term, interestingly enough, is plural, not singular. Therefore, it's a strong contrast with the previous statement, which was in the singular, a mature person. Here, children is plural. It means individuals are in view. Now, hear the implication of this. We're children when there's not unity involved. We're children when there is when there is lack of corporate harmony. In other words, it's talking about the wrong focus on individualism and self-assertion. These are the enemies of unity and maturity. If that's what characterizes us, then we are also characterized, according to this text, as babies, stunted and imperfect, isolated individuals. And he says we're to grow out of this. And the text is very careful again. Not into separate people, plural, but into one complete person, individual. Now look, quick disclaimer here. I'm not talking about conformity. That's uniformity. I'm talking about congruity, or unity, or harmony. Different ingredients blended into a fantastic sauce, or great cake. What happens if there's improper or incomplete blending? Let me tell you what happens. You go, yuck. Growth in service as well, verses 15 and 16. Oh, this is that greatly used and abused text. I'm speaking the truth to you in love. If you've got to say that, you probably aren't. Look, as the text says here, lovingly speak the truth. That's a sign of maturity. And here's what it doesn't mean. It does not mean crusades for truth. It does not mean truth at all costs, regardless of the hurt that's inflicted. It doesn't mean aggressively correcting error wherever we can find it, or even if we can't find it, we'll correct it anyhow. Friends, love attracts others to truth and focuses it. If that's not what's happening, then you're not doing this right, or at all. And this is an important part of growth. Growth, as the text tells us, so that we can be more fully like Him. Did you catch that? So we can be more fully like Him. That's part of the goal here. Once again, the Living Scriptures, the alternate Pew Bible, puts it very nicely. So let me give you its translation. Grow to be more and more like Him, using more of the resources He provides and allowing Him to be more at home in and through our lives. Nicely said. Bit of rabbinic wisdom, written ages ago. This kind of growth is characterized by support, by unity, by harmony, by shalom, as these terms and images through this text have pointed out for us. It's a growth characterized by building up each other in love. Love, that climax, that capstone. It's not being critical or judging others, because that's tearing down. It's not complaining about situations, but it's positively and productively correcting. It has to do with lifting and supporting and encouraging and building, as the imagery in this text points out. Getting nosy again. Therefore, we need to check ourselves. Are we construction engineers or demolition experts? As the rabbi points out, growth is characterized by each part doing its work for the good of the whole. That means that each of us is fulfilling his or her proper function and making a unique contribution. Are we? I put together this law or principle of growth from various sources. So let me share it with you before we conclude. Each individual should learn more and more to live as a unique part of a great whole, should consciously realize the life of participation should contribute to their appropriate individual share towards the completeness and the harmony of the community. In this way, each one expands their abilities in all their uniqueness and find their full expression in the growing life and development of the body. All this is crowned and controlled by love. It's one attempt at trying to put all this text together. So, let me share it with you one more time. Each individual should learn more and more to live as a unique part of a great whole, should consciously realize the life of participation, and should contribute to their appropriate individual share towards the completeness and harmony of the community. In this way, each one's expanding abilities in all their uniqueness will find their full expression in the growing life and development of that community. All this is crowned and controlled by love. Look, we can all participate in an environment of care, a community of love and of warmth and acceptance. We can all experience that sense of belonging and support that we desire, and those around us in the world desire as well. We can develop and grow into our full potential. This is what God intends for us. But there are a couple principles involved. Some of them have been shared with you. I will conclude with this example. I've titled it, "You Have the Sense God Gave a Goose." When next you see geese, either heading south or north, you will find that they fly in a V formation. Now, you might be interested in knowing why they fly that way. As each bird flaps its wings, it creates an uplift for the bird immediately following. By flying in a V formation, the whole flock adds at least 71% greater flying range than if each bird flew on its own. Whenever a goose falls out of formation, it suddenly feels the drag and resistance of trying to go it alone, and it quickly goes back into formation to take advantage of the lifting power of the bird immediately in front. Let me interject. If we had as much sense as a goose, we would stay in formation with those who are headed the same way we are going. Back to the goose story. When the lead goose gets tired, it rotates back in the wing, and another goose flies point. Finally, when a goose gets sick or is wounded by a shot and falls out, two geese fall out of formation and follow it down to help and to protect it. They stay with it until it's either able to fly or until it is dead. And then they launch out on their own or with another formation to catch up with the original group. You know, if people knew we would stand by them like geese, they'd push down the walls of this place to get in. I'll leave you with the question. Do you have the sense that God gave you boots? Don't answer it for me. Answer it for the God who gave geese such good sense. To do so in quiet for the next minute or so. As we respond with the Elenu on pages 102 to 107, we're reminded of a couple things. We're reminded of what we anticipate as we began our anticipation at the beginning of our service, the Messianic age, the day of eternal Shabbat, when the world will be perfected under the rule of the Lord Almighty. But we anticipate another thing as we now stand, facing Jerusalem again. We remember that we have a calling. Remember the text that the rabbi wrote? That you live worthy of the call. And now you get a chance to accept that call. And you say, our calling is our task. If you're accepting it, as I've said from time to time before, it's okay to bow at the appropriate spot. If you're not accepting that calling, probably not a good idea to bow. That might be hypocritical. Pages 102 to 107, as we respond.
It is incumbent upon us to praise the Master of all, to exalt the Creator of the world, for He has made us distinct from the nations and unique among the families of the earth. Our destiny is not like theirs, our calling is our task. We bow down and acknowledge before the King of Kings that there is none like Him. For He stretched forth the heavens like a tent and established the earth. Truly there is none like our Lord and King. As the Torah says, you shall know this day and reflect in your heart that it is the Lord who is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. There is none else. We hope, O Lord our God, to soon behold your majestic glory, when all abominations shall be removed, and all false gods shall be at an end. Then shall the world be perfected under the rule of the Lord Almighty, and all mankind shall call upon your name. For to you every knee must bow, and every tongue declare that you are God. Reign over us soon and forever. May the kingdom of David's great Son be established forever. For then shall the words be fulfilled, the Lord shall be king forever, and the Lord shall be king over all the earth. On that day the Lord shall be one, and his name one. Kakatuba Toratacha, Adonai Imro, Le'olam Va'ed, V'ne'emar, V'haya Adonai, L'melech Kol Haaretz, V'yom Ha'u, V'yom Ha'u Yeh Adonai Echad, U'shmo, U'shmo,
You may be seated.